you take over.
No, 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 no. This
No.
is, I did the first session. Now this one is in charge. You are in charge.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very honored.
Yeah, please.
I think that all speakers are there, apart from Obucina, who asked us to read a presentation. Do you want me to read it, or I will?
Yeah, I think let's do that last. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then.
And you have to tell everybody the time. We took 50. Yeah, we had taken 15 minutes each.
Okay.
With a little warning 2 minutes before. And but how many are? We have 4, and we have 1.5 hours.
Yes, I think that 15 minutes is enough. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
It's a very short time, but okay. Yeah. Shall they introduce themselves very shortly?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to start, David.
Yes, I can start. No issue. No issue. No issue. I can start.
Up to you. Up to you. I'm okay if so another wanna start with presentation.
Yes, yes, I can start. No issue.
Okay. Okay, Devender.
No. I think we have a. You want to follow the because you know there is just because there are 2 India papers.
Yes.
They're listed. So first, let us take the non-India papers as mentioned here. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a list with you, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
David,
so anyway, I don't want to interfere, Marzia. Please.
No, you can interfere. No problem. We are co-chairing it. No, according to the program, David should be the first speaker.
Okay.
Right. David Marko. I mean, David is the name.
And Marko, that's family name. Thank you very much. Let me introduce myself. One more time, my name is David Marko. I'm from Slovakia. And actually, I'm a PhD student at University of Ostrava in the Czech Republic. So that's a pleasure for me to participate in this online conference, because I usually participated in this conference last year, also 2 years ago. So it's very, very nice occasion to share our scientific researches with the other people. So it's very, very nice occasion. So let me introduce my topic, and it's geopolitics of Indonesia under president of Joko Widodo. Indonesia is the world's most populous country and its 7th largest economy. Yet the Southeast Asian country has historically played an undersized role in the global affairs. Its traditional policy of neutrality in international relations has made a big player in Asia and rendered most invisible in international forums such as the United Nations. Geopolitics of Indonesia, as the largest archipelago state in the world, it makes 2 main interrelated arguments. First, Indonesia's geographical traits suggest that it could be both a source of weakness and vulnerability, as much as it brings enormous potential for political, economical, even military power. Second, the historical origins of conceptual foundation of geopolitics as a policy suggests that Indonesia's geopolitical architecture is based on 3 building blocks: the strategic trinity, geostrategy, and geoeconomics. So it means the research and economic dimension of and the geopolitics, the social and political dimension. Assessing and understanding Indonesia's geopolitical architecture is important for 2 reasons. First and foremost is Indonesia's strategic centrality within the Asia-Pacific region. Indonesia is not only abundant with natural resources such as oil, gas, but the country is also located in the middle of crossroads between the Indian and Pacific Oceans and between the Asian and Australian continents. It also controls 4 of the world's 7 major maritime checkpoints, including the Malacca Strait. This further suggests that the economic, political, and military lifeline of the Asia-Pacific region and its major powers, the United States, India, Australia, China, Japan, depends on the stability, foreign policy, and geopolitical thinking in Jakarta. Secondly, it's about Indonesia's geopolitical thinking and history in relation to its maritime territorial behavior. The Indonesian archipelago contains more than 18,000 islands and comprise approximately 2 million kilometers square of land and almost 8 million kilometers square of exclusive economic zone. Indonesia has more than 260 million people divided into over 300 ethnic groups with their own language, history, and socio-cultural systems, as well as 5 major religions. The problem is not only a matter of sheer diversity, however, a dozen or more of non-Javanese ethnic groups are large enough to credibly claim a separate national status, making separatism believable and even feasible open option, especially given the geographic fragmentation of the country. Furthermore, the uneven level of economic development between Jakarta and the regions, and in some cases, exploitation by the former between the geographically dispersed major ethnic groups have created convoluted center, periphery relations filled with underlying tensions. The advent of political and financial decentralization in 2001 has reduced some of this tension. While today's strategic environment in Asia-Pacific region is changing, as suggested by the quote earlier in this section, the preceding analysis on Indonesia's geopolitical architecture can help provide a better structured assessment of why the Indian Ocean is starting to feature more prominently in Indonesia's strategic thinking. First of all, in terms of the security and strategic dimension, 3 factors are increasingly predominant for Jakarta in relations to the Indian Ocean region and tourism or Islamic radicalism, maritime security, and great political powers. Indonesia's foreign policy under current President Joko Widodo is that suited to rising middle power with a claim to regional leadership. Its operating principles to have been unchanged since first enunciation in 1983. It means in Indonesian, bebas dan aktif, independent and active, shape pragmatically exciting situations. Of course, we should mention that Mr. President Joko revived Sukarno's Trisakti. It means 3 pillars of the state as the organizing principles of his presidential campaign in Indonesia that is sovereign, economically independent, and with a strong socio-cultural identity. And these are reflected in his foreign policy, in his vision and mission manifesto for the presidential elections. Joko listed the action agendas necessary for achieving his foreign policy priorities. These were a promotion of Indonesia as an archipelago maritime state, promotion of Indonesia's middle power regional role, and a new focus on Indo-Pacific and reforming the foreign policy process. 5 critical areas in particular define Joko with foreign policy. There are building the global maritime axis, economic diplomacy, Indonesia's role in ASEAN, navigating between China and the United States of America, and Indonesia's role in South China Sea. The bedrock of Indonesian foreign policies in at least 2001 firm. The country continues to be a responsible, cooperative, international partner sharing interest in economic growth and peace, secure international order with like-minded states. However, heightened tension in the South China Sea is limiting the space for Indonesia's hedging strategy. I should mention global maritime axis. The signature topic in discussion of Joko's foreign policy is the concept, new doctrine of Indonesia's as porous maritime dunia. It means a global maritime axis. This has been called the central foreign policy pillar of his administration. It's not really a policy, however, it states a goal of establishing Indonesia as a strong, secure maritime-based middle power between the Pacific and Indian Ocean. And it is rubric under which a number of discrete strategies and policies can be linked in a symbolic unity. Global maritime axis of fulcrum.
David, your time is expiring.
Okay, so it's running really very fast. I prepared much more my papers, etc., etc. So very simply, so global maritime axis, that's very important part of foreign policy of the current Indonesian government. I should also mention economic diplomacy of current President Joko Widodo, and finally, development of international relations with the other partners within Southeast Asia, but not only with this, with China, United States, and India, because we see that region, Asia Pacific or Indian Pacific region, is very strategic in this time, and maybe it will be the most strategic region in the world during 21st century. And finally, we should just underline that foreign policy of President Joko Widodo just copyright geopolitical limits of Indonesia, and we see that there is very strong efforts to make or to establish Indonesia as a regional power, decisive power in this region, and to balance influence of China and the America in this region. So thank you very much for your attention, and have a nice day.
Yeah.
Maria, you are unmuted.
Yeah, we were not able.
I'm sorry.
Marzia.
Sometimes I
hear you.
forget. Also, when I teach, sometimes I forget to switch on the microphone. Anyway, Manu, shall we keep the questions for the at the end of the presentations?
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay. Okay then. Devender Kumar. Your presentation. Is it correct?
Yes, Devender Kumar. And apologies, previously I got confused between David and Devender. I thought you were calling for me when you were saying David. Yeah. So can I begin my presentation, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chair.
Just a moment. Manu, I think that the other Kumar.
Yeah.
uh,
Yes.
I think she's a lady. She's not there.
Obucina,
No,
Vedran,
Obucina, she's not there.
she's not there.
Speaker, I think, is there.
And you have her paper, so you'll present that later,
No,
right?
I have only the paper of Obucina about Iran.
Yeah. So you want to present it now or after the two
No,
presentations?
I'm just wondering what is the other Indian speaker, because she doesn't seem to be there.
Mrinalini is not there?
No,
No,
Mrinalini
she's
is
not there. So we'll have three presentations. Yeah.
Okay, then
Yeah.
they can have also more time, perhaps.
Sure.
So if you want to add something, David, to your
No, it's okay.
just
I'm
a few
already
minutes.
finished. So
I think we also had
maybe
Okay.
if there are some questions, so
Yes. Okay.
yeah, I think we can
Okay.
come back. We had very
Yes.
interesting discussion.
Okay.
More
Yes.
time we have. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Devender, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Hello, everyone. This is Devender Kumar. I am a doctoral candidate and a senior research fellow at the Center for West Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. And the topic for my today's presentation is India and the Middle East amidst the COVID crisis, non-alignment to multi-alignment. Well, basically, in my paper, I have tried to see how non-aligned movement gained prominence in the Indian foreign policy along the multi-alignment strategy of the current government since the rise of COVID-19 pandemic. And in my study, I have taken, China as a major focus of my study to see and find out the major, reasons for the change in Indian attitude from non-alignment to multi-alignment, because non-alignment did not get that much importance in the first tenure of Prime Minister Modi. But since the, COVID-19, we see the non-aligned movement stage is getting much more prominence and importance in the eyes of Indian foreign policy makers. So if you look at, the whole situation of a corona issue, well, no one had imagined that in a very short span of time, there would be a crisis of such a large scale, such as COVID-19, that it would successfully be added to the categories of events and situations that impacted the global politics, like the First World War and the Second World War. In case of, United States, they lost more people in Second World War. They lost more people in corona than they lost in the Second World War. And if you look at the previous, international crises, most of them had been an outcome of, colonial ambitions or military pacts or leadership goals or international treaties, negotiations, greed, or territorial ambitions. But this crisis is primarily, in my opinion, is the, outcome of activities of one country only, and that is China. And due to which, the world politics has also witnessed setbacks since the emergence of this pandemic, which has also raised questions on the relevance of many world organizations, especially the World Health Organizations. And the crisis is more or less, in my opinion, is a part of China's psychological warfare strategy, because the people in China are much more like us, but the regime is Sanjuvian. So the Politburo Standing Committee, which was rivaling with the United States of America from very long, in order to counter its influence and control throughout the world, has find out the other mechanism to counter this strategy more prominence than the ones which are well known in the world. So in my paper, I have tried to see through this changes brought by China, I have tried to see like in what way they have impacted the Indian foreign policy behavior. Apart from the shocks and deaths this pandemic has brought, it also brought the major changes in the relations of countries, institutions, and the people. In the context of India, the most fundamental pressures the policy makers in India faced during this pandemic was in the foreign policy domain. And Middle East, without a doubt, gained much more attention in the eyes of the leadership, because the region is home to large number of Indian expatriates and diaspora, and which are who send large number of remittances to India, and India has also become one of the biggest this recipient of the remittances from the world. And amidst this pandemic, change was also visible in Indian foreign policy outlook, which not only seek to safeguard the Indians facing the pandemic, but also tried to exploit the strategic vacuum available in the region, largely due to the United States failure in providing essential supplies and its failure in combating the pandemic. India also appeared as an option for many countries in fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. And before I move on to India and the Middle East, how India, engaged with the Middle East, I like to give some time to the origin of this pandemic and the role of World Health Organization and the the rise of, or the, as the strategic thinkers these days are talking about, the new emerging world order. So if you look at the origin of this crisis, in my opinion, this Wuhan virus had become a pandemic largely because of the activities of one country, that is China, because of its hiding of information from the world. The first case, which was detected on 17th of November 2019, and the crackdown by the government, Chinese government in Wuhan province on doctors and various others from spreading the information, has made this COVID-19 and problem for every country on the earth today. The failure of the Politburo Standing Committee in this situation has caused a huge casualty on every continent of the world, and even it has put various governments in the different corners of the world to ponder on the question of how to deal with this pandemic, which in the initial phase required a lockdown at the large scale, and because of which we are also having conference digitally rather than having a physical conference which used to happen. And because of all these things, it has also all these things have destroyed the plans and dreams of nations which wanted to develop, and all these things have brought them down to only ensuring one thing to their citizens, and that is ensuring their survival. And the world politics has also witnessed a setback due to this. And if in all this, the role of World Health Organization becomes very major. For example, if you look at the role of the World Health Organization, which ignored repeated requests from Taiwan in December 2019. Taiwan was repeatedly writing and mails to WHO that there is some virus emerging in China and people are facing huge health issues. It requires concern from World Health Organization, but its repeated ignorance made it a problem of the world. And its failure to provide relevant strategy to fight the virus has further escalated the problem and made it a global issue. And the love affair between WHO and China further escalated the pandemic and made it reach where it could not. Since WHO became a silent spectator when its advisory was needed the most, its Director General T.A. Ghebreyesus was thinking basically that it will be too early to declare it a global pandemic. And since the inception of this crisis, many countries throughout the world has suffered a lot and are still struggling. Which has also given rise to a new world order, in my opinion. Historically, if you look at all big events in history, they have given rise to new world order. For example, the killing of Archduke Franz Ferdinand on 28th of June 1914, after which the pacts were invoked in Europe and world saw the rise of the beginning of First World War, and after which it also gave rise to the establishment of League of Nations. Similarly, the rise of Hitler in the 1930s and invasion of Poland on 1st November 1939, which also gave rise to the Second World War, and the League's failure in stopping this war also led to the establishment of United Nations and WHO. The uniqueness of both these wars was both killed large number of people and led to change in world order. Similarly, world order was also changed when the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic was disintegrated, and that also marked the end of Cold War. And post Cold War, we saw the emergence of United States of America as the lonely superpower, and the world order began to be structured more around the USA and its policy lines. That also faced challenges in the post 2000 era from China, especially. China posed huge challenges to the United States, and there was a trade war going on between both the countries. And many scholars came up with the argument that there was a prior to this COVID-19, they came up with the argument that there was a new Cold War going on between United States of America, and some said that it can also give rise to a third World War, so on and so forth. And the spread of the Chinese virus have also gave rise to the possibility of new world orders. and all countries are thinking about their policies to how to connect on this digital era. And USA is appearing to be, much more focused domestically than internationally. And countries are mainly focusing on, health concerns and how to get agreements on humanitarian assistance. The pandemic has also ensured the shift in world order, but the new world order would be the deciding factor in the functioning of countries, since alliances and military power has less role to play in this current situations, and humanitarian responses has become the need of the hours, and which will also, and all these things have also paved the way for the reforms in many world organizations, especially in World Health Organizations, especially under the things which have been done under the leadership of T.A. Ghebreyesus, and which has put question marks on the credibility of WHO and various other organizations. So let's coming back to the India and the Middle East, how India has navigated its relations with the conflict-prone Middle East, which has always been a challenge for India and Indian policymakers, since the region is beset with large number of issues. For example, since the Arab Spring, the Indian policymakers have find it hard to make good relations with the most countries in the Middle East. For example, in our previous government under the Congress party, our policy was much more inclined towards the Arabs, and on various issues we sided with the Arabs, but we failed to get a similar response in the crises that India faced, especially with this aggression that it faced from Pakistan. For example, in 1965 wars, large number of Arab countries did not support us. In the 1971 war, 15 Middle Eastern countries even clubbed together in the United Nations and called India aggressors. And so in most of the Indian issues, we failed to get the support from Arabs. But Indian foreign policy has remained very much intact with the Arab policy lines. We never made relations with Israel for more than 45 years, and we didn't have diplomatic relations with it. But since the Palestinians signed the peace agreement under the Oslo, which gave an excuse to the Indian policymakers also for establishing diplomatic relations with Israel. And but since then, Israel has emerged as a very good partner for India in terms of supplying defense equipment. Since the Kargil War of 1999, under which most of the countries, especially United States, which ignored and did not provide the satellite imagery of the army, which encroached into the Indian territories, and during that time, Israel emerged as one of the major partner for India, provided the satellite imagery and many other arms and ammunition, which helped us winning the war. So since then, we see the rise of Israeli. We see the rise of Israel's importance in the Indian in the eyes of Indian policymakers. And coming back to the Middle Eastern region, since the Arab Spring, it has posed various challenges to India, since the topple of regimes in Tunisia, Libya, or Egypt. If you look at the whole Middle Eastern region, the region is full with many issues. For example, there is a Yemen conflict, which made India to launch Operation Rahat in 2015, under which more than 4,000 to 5,000 of Indian citizens were rescued from Yemen. Similarly, there is a Syrian conflict going on in the region. There is a Iran-Saudi rivalry going on in the region, which under which they are not only competing with each other, but the same rivalry is visible in other countries also. For example, there is a Iran-Saudi rivalry in Iraq, there is a Iran-Saudi rivalry in Bahrain, there is a Iran-Saudi rivalry in Lebanon, there is a Turkish-Saudi rivalry, there is a Iran nuclear program going on from very long, and there is a Qatar crisis. And in all these things, we see the declining American influence in the Middle Eastern region. And if you look at the Indian foreign policy, how we have been able to navigate, especially under the under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. If we look at his rise to power in 2014, there was various allegations against him that he belongs to a Hindu party, or this is a Hindu party. They will never be able to make good relations with Middle East. But Prime Minister Modi disapproved all the allegations that other made against him. He made very good relations with United Arab Emirates. He made very good relations with Saudi Arabia. Not only that, he received the highest civilian awards from Saudi Arabia, Palestine, UAE, and he opted proactive policy and chose to be the rule maker than rule taker. And he opted a country-specific approach rather than having one policy for the whole region, because for a very long we opted and guided under the principles of non-aligned movement and various other strategy, which made our policy very much predictable. Anybody could guess what would be the Indian move in the international forums. But since the rise of this government, there is a change in Indian foreign policy behaviors. India successfully dehyphenated relations with Israel, which was a very important step, even shocked various policymakers in India, with the belief that India needs Israel also as long as we need the Arab Palestinians. But does not mean that there is a change in India's decision or India's behavior or India's policy or its commitment towards the Palestinian issue. India's commitment to the Palestinians are very much intact. They are still same which were earlier, but there is a change in the way how we approach both the countries. And under this government, we have also tried to link our diaspora with the mainstream. If you look at the region, West Asia can be called the commercial or the capital for India. There is a large number of Indians. For example, there are more than 31 million Indians living in the West Asian region as non-resident Indians and as person of Indian origin or Indian origins. And economics, without a doubt, is the key for India's engagement with the Middle Eastern region. And since the oil boom in the 1970s in the Gulf, which has saw the petrodollars coming into the Middle Eastern region, which led to the huge infrastructure projects in the Gulf, which made this region important for India, because a large number of Indians begin to go to Gulf countries for their livelihood. And because of that, we have been able to develop huge cultural relations also with the Middle Eastern region. Indian languages are largely spoken languages in the most part of Middle East, and there are various Indian radio programs, and the CBSE Central Board Education of India is having a special board for Indians who are studying there, and they are giving degrees to them. There is also a central schooling system which has large number of schools in India. They are also having large number of schools in various parts of the Gulf. And Bollywood movies are also quite famous in West Asia, which has been able to forge cultural cooperation between both the countries. And under this new government, despite of the allegations that other made against the Prime Minister, he has successfully been able to do many of the visits. For example, he visited UAE twice, and he visited Turkey also. He went to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Oman, and Palestine, Jordan, and his most famous one was his visit to Israel, which was the first ever visit made by any Indian Prime Minister to the state. And the main focus of his government was that he assured that his policy will not be the repetition of United Progressive Alliance government, which ruled India from 2004 to 2014. And his agenda is the development. He wants to take every country on the earth with on this ride for the development. And coming back to this pandemic and how India reached out to the world in the Middle East during these difficult times, India did all necessary things, even took the help of technology for interactions, engagement, and conversations to reach out to many countries. The contact was made to G20 leaders, and PM Modi interacted with more than 100 nations for increasing the response to fight the pandemic. The pandemic also made the
just 3 minutes.
Okay, ma'am. Just okay. So because of all these things, the rise of pandemic and all, the non-aligned movement stage was also very much utilized by this government to forge cooperation for the medical supplies for various countries which were fighting this pandemic. And Because of the corona crisis, there was a huge rise in India's medical diplomacy, which reached out to more than 150 countries with supplying large number of medical equipments. And not only this, during this crisis, India also helped China in the initial phase. According to Minister of State for External Affairs V. Muralidharan, he outlined that India supplied more than 20 million worth of medical equipments to China in the month of February 2020. And to conclude, I would say that Indian foreign policy during the COVID crisis has been majorly proactive with providing help to more than 150 states, with non-aligned movement stage gaining prominence alongside the multi-alignment policy of the government, with non-alignment stage getting used by the government to forge greater collaboration, to forge a greater partnership with the countries to fight against the pandemic. The success of Indian pharmaceuticals has also helped in building good image of India. The Chinese mess is being cleared by India. India is proving to be the pharmacy of the world, but having faced failure in checkbook diplomacy and medical diplomacy of China, the New Delhi remains to be cautious of China's wedging strategy to counter and safeguard Chinese interests worldwide. Thank you very much. I can't hear you, ma'am. I can't hear you, ma'am.
Thank you. Sorry, the microphone.
Okay.
Thank you, Mano. Thank you, Devender. Mano, shall I go ahead with the paper or shall we open a discussion now? What do you prefer? Mano? You connected? Well, as Manu is not...
okay, sorry.
Manu, are you there?
I said,
okay.
Yeah.
Do you prefer to open the discussion now and then read the Iranian paper, or
I would suggest that let's have the Iranian paper, then we'll have Indonesia, India, and Iran, 3 case studies to compare about COVID and foreign policy.
Okay, it's just 4 pages.
Yeah.
Paper. I try to read and summarize if I'm able to do that. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay, so after the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran had to find a new way of connecting to the world. Following Fred Halliday's historical sociology as a way to understand the Middle Eastern foreign policy, one might consider Islamic Republic as a state whose international relations and the process of its legitimacy rests upon ideology. According to the Iranian worldview, rich countries with higher level of development enjoy better global position, and they misuse other countries void of resources and make huge gap in economic imbalance between rich and poor. Economic and political hegemony of such states includes also cultural hegemony that treats the history, culture, and identity of many countries. Following the Articles 152 and 154 of the Iranian Constitution, Iranian foreign policy cannot be seen as neutral, but non-aligned with the hegemonic powers, and considers the international organizations as best places for cooperation with other states. Thus, the Islamic Republic became a member of non-aligned movement already in 1979, as the principles of mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, equality and mutual interests, non-aggression, mutual coexistence, and non-interference in each other's internal affairs were also constitutional values of the new Iran. Before that, Iran was in Cento Pact, led by American vision of the Middle East, for which the Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was a great proponent and supporter. Only after the revolution did NAM accept Iranian foreign policy as eligible for membership. In the words of the Cuban foreign minister, Isidoro Malmierca, in the world, but there is no, sorry, but there is no, she mentions the words, but only after the revolution did NAM accept Iranian foreign policy as eligible for membership in the words of the Cuban foreign minister, but she doesn't mention the words. Anyway, such Iranian inclination was even more accentuated through Iranian revolutionary motto, based on self-perceived uniqueness of the Islamic Republic in the Cold War era. I'm quoting, not East nor West, only Islamic Republic. This revolutionary ideal was based on ideologically driven foreign policy that included the fight against global arrogance, animosity towards Israel and Arab monarchies, and against imperialist policies. At the time, 4 durable principles of Iranian foreign policy emerged, refuting all forms of foreign dominance, keeping Iranian independence and territorial integrity, defense of rights of all Muslims without entering in alliance with hegemonic powers, fostering peaceful relations with all non-violent countries. Iranian membership in NAM at the time, and in comparison to some other Muslim countries, such as petromonarchies, was thus ideological and non-pragmatic. Although none of the leaders, including Ruhollah Khomeini, did not offer clear understanding of why Iran wants to be a strong member of NAM. However, following Khomeini's remark on this topic, one may conclude that Iran joined the NAM because the organization refuted both hegemonic blocs. The problems of NAM countries in finding their place in the world after the Cold War were partially solved with the need for a trans-regional institution in an increasingly multipolar world, where NAM is also seen as a lever of pressure on the United Nations. In the final decade of the Cold War, Iran fought against Iraq in 8 years long war and against increasing sanctions. Due to many disagreements and diverging attitudes, NAM did not condemn either Iraq or Iran, nor did it have any official standpoint, although numerous diplomatic activities were seen between the NAM member states and both Tehran and Baghdad. Only after the Cold War did Iranian diplomacy envision its full involvement in the NAM, and this proved beneficial for the Iranian government in its outreach to the world. In general, Iran considers its role in the movement as an important member that will not accept the domination of any power in the world, and that will seek a return of organization to its original goals. So, as you can see, Iran has a very radical approach to its role within the NAM. This was evident in NAM's similar positions to the Iranian foreign policy, common specificities in the Palestinian issue, opposition to anti-religious movement and fight against racism, or demands to the global north to be open for fair economic and political relations with the global south. NAM also did not pressure Iran to succumb to the International Atomic Energy Agency, as the organization is keen to stay away from political pressures. In fact, at the meeting in Havana in 2006, the leaders of NAM issued a separate statement in support of Iranian peaceful nuclear activities. Proposed track is to fight against world powers and encourage a strong independence of nations with the task of respecting the human dignity. Iran's presidency of NAM in 2012 was seen in Tehran as an opportunity to increase cooperation and coordination of regional securities through an idea of global joint management, which became one of the strategic goals of the Islamic Republic. This envisions the global role of the movement in the international arena in order to achieve equal rights, realization of human ideals, and to overcome insecurity and discrimination. Iran is supportive of NAM as a sort of alternative to the contemporary global mechanisms in resolving international disputes and in developing peace, and foremost an alternative to the UN Security Council, or at least as an organization that would help in rethinking the goals and structure of the UN Security Council. The greatest opportunity of Iran to appear and propose its policies for NAM were possible during the meeting of NAM in Tehran in 2012. Iran took over the presidency of the movement from Egypt, a country that only 1 year before had an uprising and had its first free elections. At this occasion, the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ali Khamenei, gave a speech that outlined Iran's thoughts about modern NAM and place of Iran within it. He condemned the UN Security Council as an irrational, unjust, and utterly undemocratic structure, which abuses the mechanisms of the UN. He stressed the importance of non-proliferation treaty and confirmed that the Islamic Republic will never produce nuclear weapons, but will also never relinquish its nation's right to peaceful use of nuclear energy. This is a policy whose motto, nuclear energy for all and nuclear weapons for no one, echoes the idea of breaking the monopoly of global powers in producing the nuclear weapons. But it's a very interesting position, according to me. Khamenei reminded also on the need to find real and just solutions for the Palestinian question, and reminded that all solutions that have been made so far are only hypocritical in terms that the world powers accept the Palestinian rights for their state, but do nothing for this cause. The controversial Iranian president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad accused directly the United States for expropriation of science and technology and the misuse of culture and identity in Africa and South America, destruction of families, sale of weapons, and escalation of hostilities. He also accused the Western powers for ignorance, monopolistic, selfish, and hegemonic behavior, and also attacked the methods of and work of the United Nations Security Council. All of these were said in presence of the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. The meeting in Tehran has been held by Iranian diplomacy as a great success. In particular, Iranians were keen to present their role in the wave of Islamic awakening and developments in the Arab countries, particularly the crisis in Syria and Bahrain. The Islamic Republic sees itself as a model for a number of nations in NAM, as Iran demonstrates power in international media and strength against colonial bloc, which wants to isolate the country in the world arena. While these statements may be exaggerations, the Islamic Republic indeed sees the NAM as an organization that addresses the needs of the developing world and inequalities resulting from the current international political order. It uses the NAM platform to weaken the anti-Iranian climate in the international arena, and there seems to exist a global NAM consensus about the validity of Iranian claims. Such efforts were not made together with some neighboring or friendly countries in Asia. Quite contrary, Iranian diplomacy oriented their tactics within NAM to the Latin American countries, mostly those that embrace the leftist liberal governments, such as Colombia, Venezuela, Uruguay, and Cuba, sometimes other countries too, sometimes other countries too, sorry. Such a connection is based on common perceptions of American politics in their respective regions. Additionally, Latin America has many potentials for Iranian government to foster new political and economic approaches. And sometimes the revolutionary narratives make them even closer in terms of colonialism in one's prosperous civilization, role of clergy in society, and particularly at the local level, so resistance to the conditions of perceived new neocolonialism. Such was the case with joint oil and gas venture between petrochemical industries of Venezuela and Iran, as well as interests Iran has in Roraima region of Guyana, considered to be the world's largest uranium mine. Many Latin American countries support the Iranian nuclear program, and explicitly through NAM, such a notion was confirmed by Chile, Bolivia, Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. In conclusion, one may consider Iranian approach to the NAM as pragmatic, but also ideological. Iran found in NAM an excellent position to connect to the global south, particularly in times of massive sanctions that struck the country. It was foremost a platform for the religious revolutionaries to present a new political system into Iran. After that of Khomeini, it also became an organization which Iran perceived as a support mechanism for its policies, not only political and religious ones, but also economic and cultural. In many ways, Iran found a satisfactory answer to own worldview, but first and foremost for Iranian interests, in particular the influence on the UN and in terms of nuclear energy. As a latecomer, Iran unintentionally gave something to post-Cold War NAM too, the idea that alternative to the globally recognized systems is possible. Finished. Thank you. So it seems that the
thank you. I think that was a very important paper. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting paper. As she describes it, it seems that Iran is more similar to Cuba than to an Islamic republic. But anyway, it's okay. I mean, it's very interesting also for the critical role. If we compare if I can make a comment, if we compare Iran's attitude to present Indian attitude, that India, that you, Devender, say that India has the same position towards Palestine, but Mr. Modi didn't spend a single word about the recognition of Jerusalem as Israeli capital. No, so I think that you can't compare today's India's approach to Palestine with the historic Indian approach to Palestine. And of course, cooperating with Israel is not a sin as such, because many countries cooperate with Israel. But purchasing arms from Israel, collaborating at the intelligence level, and squeezing the Kashmiri minority with the help of Israel is another issue. We have already discussed about it last year, so I may repeat the same old criticism, but okay. And we have also to underline that, the Arab monarchies are not among the most progressive countries in the world. So I think there is a contradiction between present Indian foreign policy and, its non-alignment. What does it mean being a non-alignment for Modi's India today? That's my question.
May I suggest that we wait for some time to get the answers. We have some very important participants. May I suggest that Marzia, you invite Noha Khalaf, veteran scholar, activist, We are so happy to see you here. We met in Bandung several years ago, 5 years ago. So, I think Noha should make a comment on all the 3 papers and say something before we proceed. Noha, please. No, unmute yourself. Unmute. Noha, please unmute.
Sorry. I just wanted to collect an handkerchief.
Marzia,
So Noha, yes.
I just requested Noha Khalaf, a
yes.
very important scholar, activist, you know. Noha, please.
No. Thank you very much. It's a very interesting occasion to meet our old friends and militants that I haven't seen, our friend since 2015 in Bandung. I haven't heard all the papers, and I don't know if I'm in the right room because I'm supposed to be with Ziad Medwech on Palestine. I don't know where he...
No, you Miss Khalaf, you'll be at 3:45 in session 5. Okay, with me.
I don't know.
I'll be there.
Okay, you will move me. Okay.
Next session. Yeah.
So it's a big compliment, and I thank you to ask me to comment. But I didn't hear all the papers properly because I didn't know I would be asked to comment. I'm very happy to see you, and I think that the last question that our chairman has stated about Modi and India is very important because it's important to trace how India changed from being one of the main proponents and the first, dynamo for the whole non-aligned movement is not playing a role today. It's a very important thing which has actually affected the whole interest in the non-aligned movement. I am particularly critical of the whole non-aligned movement because if we think from the question of Palestine, nothing has really changed since 70 years. So where are our friends really in the third world and in the non-aligned movement? I don't think we have much power, unfortunately. Over 120 countries are in the non-aligned movement, while in the United Nations, there are about 190 nations. I know that the non-aligned movement should continue to exist because it influences also the United Nations, and it often, many times, you find that resolutions are proposed by the non-aligned movement for the question of Palestine. But the fact that there are so many different countries with different agendas in the non-aligned movement makes it, Bandung was the great time, for the third world. And the non-aligned movement, I think, was a step back. But today, for example, I found out a few days ago while reading how Gaddafi, the old Libyan leader, criticized the movement in 1986, and everybody was mad at him, I think, in Harare. And in 1973, in Algiers was maybe one of the top conferences for the Middle East. So anyway, I would like to hear your presentation, and then we can make another comment, maybe. I don't know if this is a satisfactory comment.
No, thank you.
Anyway. Thank you.
Ma'am, we can't hear you, ma'am. I can't hear you, ma'am.
You didn't hear me?
No, I hear you, but ma'am was saying something.
It's always me that I forget to switch on the
You,
no.
okay.
I was saying that presentations in this session are finished, unfortunately, but you can hear Ziad's presentation at session 5 later on. Anyway, so
Mr. Mohanty,
yeah,
our friend, our great Mr. Mohanty.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's have more questions from others.
I don't want to monopolize the stage, so I encourage the participants to ask questions. I have a question for David too. I have also another comment for Devender's presentation, but I'll keep it for later on. So, Gretchen,
we have
Yes.
there are two
do you have
hands.
any question?
There are
I see
two
your
hands.
hands, so
Yeah.
I don't know the order of the questions, but I see Eden, Pereira, Gretchen, and Victor. So who wants to ask the question before?
I may
Eden,
ask.
because he has not spoken so far.
Okay, go ahead, Gretchen.
Okay, I have a question to the Devender, Kumar. In the same time, Pakistan and India start to be members of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. As I remember, Russia promote the Indian membership and China Pakistani. What do you think about this organization, and is it helpful for resolving contradictions between India and Pakistan? And do you agree? Because I, in my papers, describe this developing organization as a representative of broader East. You know, just like NATO is a representative of broader West, can Shanghai Cooperation Organization play the same role in the greater East? Thank you.
I didn't get the first part of your question, Gretchen.
Okay, I can
What
repeat.
was the first?
The first part was about participation. Both Pakistan and India in the same time start to be a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. China promote Pakistani membership and Russia promote India membership. And could you tell me how is it helpless to resolve contradictions between India and Pakistan? Second moment of my question you have heard, yes?
I got it.
Okay.
Okay. Victor?
Yeah, I also would like to ask my question to Devender Kumar. You mentioned the term New World Order so many times, but I really would like to ask your opinion about what is the content of it, because what is the structure of this New World Order, or what is the major characteristics of this New World Order? So if I understand well, this is something like it's a new multipolar structure in which the major actors are active. So if I am right, you're just arguing that India is now an assertive power. But if India is assertive, what is the difference compared to China or compared to the United States?
Eden?
Could you get my question?
Yes.
Good afternoon. I have two questions to Devender and one question to David. Devender, how do you see the position and the possibilities of India and the US tech war against China? In Latin America, for example, raising a discussion about 5G technology. Can India occupy an important position on this, especially on Middle East, I ask this because especially considering the US and India approximation in 2020. For example, the alliance of Six Eyes revive. If this is not clear, I repeat. Forgive me my English. I don't practice much. And David, how do you see the approximation of the Indonesia and the Turkey, considering the position of Joko Widodo, position in past year on the protests in all Middle East against France in relation of the call, Macron's call in past year about Islam, about Islamic, about Muslim world. Is this? Forgive me my English.
It's all right. So I have a question for David. You spoke extensively about Indonesia's geopolitical position and its Indo-Pacific dimension, but how did Indonesia feel about the Indo-Pacific strategy? I mean, now the situation has changed with the regional comprehensive economic partnership led by China, started in November 2020. So now the picture is changing very quickly, even in the Indo-Pacific region, and even the role of India is, I think, is now, I mean, is perhaps will change with the change of American administration. But how did Indonesia perceive this, this strategy led by the United States, Japan, and India?
Okay, so I should start, or
may I have a quick question? First to Devender, would you explain multi-alignment? Is that an official formulation of government of India? How does it square with non-alignment? I mean, if I give my views on India's foreign policy, it will take a long time, so I will refrain from that. You can imagine my stand on many of these policies. It has changed tremendously. Now, to David, I think Indonesia, in the early years of Jack Widodo's rule, had a promise of really being an active player to create, to defend developing countries' interests and various issues that from Bandung to Nam we talk about. I mean, he was very, very firm on that. Even on Palestine also, he was very vocal. I have a feeling that during the last 2 years or so, he has been he has slowed down on that, and he has in this attempt to, as you explained, to have a balance between China and the US. Sometimes he is compromising with the US far too much. I mean, that is my overall assessment. I mean, I would like your comment on that. And of course, on the Iranian paper, I don't expect Marzia to give answers. But my comment is that I think the Iranian role has been very important on the whole.
I agree.
In sort of emphasizing some of the core values.
Yes.
Of non-alignment.
More than India nowadays, I can.
And more than India nowadays, yes, quite right. But if the global situation as a whole makes it difficult for countries like Iran, because of the American sanctions. Now we don't know under Biden how long it will take to restore, the deal, and Netanyahu has expected India to. Sorry, I'm making another point, Devender. Your story about India-Israel has gone quite far. Netanyahu wants India to support, in this their latest move, Israel. I think Palestinian friends are naturally very upset about the way India has gone about it. Anyway, what I'm saying is the global situation as a whole requires more activism on particularly important powers. I don't call them middle powers. Indonesia, India, and Iran, they are very important powers in the world. And if they don't take the NAM perspective and they make major compromises from time to time, then NAM and the global process of democratization suffer. And then liberation of Palestine and many such issues, the issues which have troubled us for many years in trying to change the existing economic order, communication order, the military question, and so on. The whole cause of NAM becomes weak if Indonesia, India, and Iran are not on the forefront of the NAM agenda. I mean, that was my comment. We can ask them to respond if they have no.
Yes, please.
Should I go first, or David, would you like to go first?
As you
wish. Up to you. Okay, you can go.
Okay, there are too many questions. Thank you so much for the very exciting and wonderful questions. I will begin with the Marzia ma'am's questions. The beginning from the Prime Minister did not say anything about the question of Jerusalem, right? Well, before his visit to Israel, or President Mohammed Abbas was invited to India, and he was briefed about this policy changes in Indian foreign policy behavior. He was hosted here, and the government briefed him about the upcoming changes. And after that, the government made a move of visiting Israel and having open relations with both the countries. And on the question of cooperation with Israel and purchasing arms, and well, ma'am, as I told you before, since the Kargil War of 1999, Israel has emerged as one of the major security partners for India in terms of, for getting a large number of weapons and ammunition from Israel, which India failed to get from other countries. Like I mentioned, the satellite imagery from United States, after which we also developed our own satellite called NAVIC, because since Americans declined, so we came up with our own satellite for satellite imageries. And on the question of, Israeli partnership on the Kashmir issue, well, ma'am, in 2003, Ariel Sharon, then Prime Minister of Israel, came to India. And during that time, there was allegation that some of the people from Israeli intelligence have visited Kashmir. And it became a huge issue in the Indian media that he's some sort of giving advices on how to deal with the Kashmir issue, which were all bogus without any relevant, this base on the allegations. And Kashmir is and was very much intact with is a part of our policy. And is a domestic issue. India doesn't wish to take anybody's advice on how to deal with the issue of Kashmir, and Israel has nothing to do with it. And we are not having any sort of partnership on how to deal on these issues, particularly from Israel. We don't need any dictations. And Palestinian right for self-determination since the time of independence to till now, our policy has remained the same. We are supporting Palestinian till today. We are supporting Palestinian. And on the Jerusalem capital issue of declaration by US as capital, Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, India voted against that resolution in the United Nations Security Council, and it also criticized United States against its move. There were hardly 8 or 9 countries, Caribbean countries, which supported United States move. There was a more than I guess 123 countries which voted against the decision of United States, and India is very much intact with this principle of non-alignment and its principles which were forced by a large number of Indian freedom fighters and Indian National Congresses, many of the things which have become part of Indian foreign policy behavior. So ideologically, we can never support these kind of stand, because India was the country which proposed a federal Palestine in 1947, because India was part of, there were 2 committees on Palestine, the Minority Committee and Majority Committee. India was part of Minority Committee along with Yugoslavia and Iran. We proposed federal Palestine, but in United Nations, the Majority Committee's proposal got the acceptance, and out of which after that we saw the creation of the territory should be divided. India was never in favor of that. We even were against the decision of Israelis entry into the United Nations, but King Farouk's involvement in the India's domestic affairs, such as his support to Nizam of Hyderabad's application in the United Nations, made Nehru to recognize the fact of Israel. And even after that also, we did not establish diplomatic relations with Israel for more than 42 years. And you are right, ma'am, Arab countries are not, Arab monarchs are not the, the epitome of modern countries in the world today. And this on your question of what does it mean to be a non-aligned for Modi government? Well, according to the present government, being non-aligned means that we can have differences with each other on various levels, politically or on various levels, but the countries can still cooperate with each other for the development or for the benefit of each other's citizens. So that has been taken as a policy line, and through which the country is forging good relations with countries which strategic thinkers in India are also shocked after hearing the news of Prime Minister Modi getting the highest civilian award from Saudi Arabia, despite the allegations of 2002 against him, right? And he being, awarded by UAE and all the Arab countries. It is happening because of this policy line that we can have political differences and various differences with each other on the question of whether it's Israel the issue or whether any other issue, but we should come together, and in the digital era we should cooperate for the betterment of our own people. Because of that, India has been able to supply this COVID vaccine which we have come up with, and in that also we are not saying that having any differences with you, we will not give it to you, or we will not give it to Turkey, which is coming up time and again and say something against Kashmir issue, or we are not Malaysia, which criticizes against our issue over Kashmir. We have also given this COVID vaccine to them. So in terms of engagement, we are not guided by the political differences. The agenda is the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is a family. So the government is running based on that logic. And on the question of main proponents of non-aligned movement, and Noha ma'am asked this question, I guess. These main proponents of non-aligned movement, are they changing under Prime Minister Modi? Well, ma'am, I can assure not everything has been changed. If you look at the Indian foreign policy behavior, the country is still intact with the basic principle of a non-aligned movement or various others, like I mentioned earlier. Under Modi, the only difference is there is a change in Indian foreign policy behavior, and there is a change in size and there is a change in style and substance of how country is engaging with the country, other countries, but the rest of the things are still intact and are still the same, which were earlier. And on the question of Grazen on the Shanghai Cooperation Council and is helpless to resolve the contradiction between India and Pakistan. Well, India considers what the issue of Pakistan as a domestic issue, is a bilateral issue. So it doesn't allow the intervention of external parties to dictate us on how to come on the table and resolve this issue. India doesn't want external parties intervention. We have an example of Middle East where all the issues get external intervention. In the end, what happens, the world knows. So this is a bilateral issue between both the countries. The only policy line is that terrorism should stop, because for Pakistan also it was a very good opportunity, because this government is also following the policy lines of Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, which is held as a very big personality in under the BJP party, which is running the country under the National Democratic Alliance. He in 1998 started a bus service to Pakistan, and he was there, and he was have a resolve most of the issues. But what was the result of his initiative? When he came back, there was a Kargil attack on the Pakistani army came inside. Similarly, Prime Minister Modi met and there was a attack.
We have just 6 minutes left for this session.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going too long. I'm so sorry for the too long answer. So as I said, it is a bilateral issue, and both unless the terrorism stops, both countries.
This is the same old story, that India-Pakistan dispute is a local, not even a regional, but a local issue. So yes, unless an international border is there, unless there are UN resolutions on the conflicts between India and Kashmir, that cannot be. It cannot be a local issue, okay? It has to be an international issue. You can keep on ignoring it, but there is international law and international rights, okay? So, and it's the biggest guarantee against these blunders. Okay, can give now the space to other questions and answers, please. Okay, also to David.
Okay. So I can. So thank you very much also for your questions about Indonesia. So I registered three questions. So very fast, I just want to answer it. First question, it was from you, which is Professor Casolari, about Indian Ocean region. Of course, when I was talking about Asia Pacific, I was thinking also about Indian Pacific region and about policy of regional power as it is Indonesia. Of course, we see policy of ASEAN countries, if I can underline this, to balance centrality and to be we can say bridge builder between, for example, between China or the United States, but at the same time we see I would say good regional cooperation between Malaysia, Singapore, India and Indonesia at the same time, because also these countries register maybe very aggressive Chinese foreign policy. So they just react and to protect their territory or waters, to protect national resources. It's natural reaction if there is someone very strong and the others are, we can say, weak, but many not so strong countries, existence of very strong partner unified the others. So it's my question about this region of Indo-Pacific region. Another question was about Indonesian reaction and Turkish policy, etc., etc. What happened in October in France? Of course, Indonesia as the largest Muslim country is the leader of a Muslim world, we can say. But at the same time, we should underline that it's non-Arabic Muslim world. And of course, Mr. President Joko Widodo condemned these attacks in France, but at the same time, he expressed that difference between heritage, religion, etc., and personal decision of people, etc., etc. But at the same time, it's very important to underline, for example, economic cooperation between Turkey and Indonesia. I would say that was also a question. At the same time, there's very, very strong and as, for example, Indonesia see Turkey. So for Indonesia, Turkey is very, very good economic partner. I can just express, for example, or to show that there exists military cooperation, and for example, the product of this cooperation is medium tank. It's called Harimau for Indonesian mariners, and we see that Turkey is going to be technological regional power, mainly for Turkish nations and Muslim nations in the Middle East. And the third question, it was about Indonesian politics at the beginning of 50s from Bandung Conference and the changement of today's foreign policy. Of course, I would say this time was also very, very romantic during Bandung Conference. It was very nice period of time. I'm from Slovakia. I can maybe underline very good relations between Czechoslovakia and India, but also with Indonesia. But at the same time, it's good to say that realism in geopolitics is still existing, and Indonesia is just making her own foreign policy, and we see that the times from 50s, 60s are changed, and Indonesia naturally reacts what is happening, for example, in South China Sea, in the Pacific region, Indian Ocean region. So that's my comment. I don't know if it's okay. You can ask more.
It's all right. Any other questions?
Our time is up. You can conclude.
Well, we have still 15 minutes, so we can conclude. But I leave you the conclusion, Mano, if you want to.
No.
I'm very bad in concluding. Well, my overall impression, if I think about these historic members of NAM, I may be wrong, like India or Indonesia, that you said earlier, David, if I'm not wrong, that Indonesia had to compromise with the United States on several issues. And India too had to, in a way, it had to choose to compromise, to reapproach to the United States, and that's not only the BJP's government responsibility, because I personally think that India approach to the United States, it shifted from being a non-aligned country to a US ally, as I used to say. And it started in 2005 with the nuclear deal that was, carried out and signed by the Congress government, by Manoranjan Singh. So, and it was a big deal. It was a big development for India, not being a signatory of the non-proliferation treaty, to become a recognized and officially and internationally recognized nuclear power. No, so I think that there's major changes in foreign policy as far as these important non-members, because they both India and Indonesia were the founders of the NAM movement. I think these major changes reflect about the meaning and the sense of the NAM and of these countries being members of the NAM. Yes, they have to be members of the NAM, but their role changed in a very impressive way. Gracian, have you?
Yes, Marzia, it was a very interesting issue that you told us that from 2005, India started to be a ally of United States. But what about the relations between India and Russia? As we know, United States is on the ongoing process of defending Russia, to fight against Russia. And when we talk about a real alliance, it is quite unusual support United States in the processes to fight against the.
Well, Russia is still. I mean, the relationship between, as it's my own perception, but the relationship between India and Russia is out of discussion. And it has always been out of discussion.
You see the notice on the screen. Our session will close in 30 seconds.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
Breakout room.
Okay, so.
But not even the United States.
That was a good question, and that is why Devender called it multi-alliance.
But
Anyway, our next session will allow us.